And we start this afternoon with the presidential contest. Ron DeSantis is out. Many individuals in Camp Trump are extending an olive branch of friendship and reconciliation to DeSantis supporters. I wonder if DeSantis supporters will accept that olive branch of reconciliation or not. I believe many of them, if not most of them, will eventually come around to the idea that Donald Trump is obviously a sight better than a debilitated, a dissolving Joe Biden. Obviously, Donald Trump was and would be a better president than a non-existence of a president that is Joe Biden. There are only two left, Donald Trump and Nikki Haley. We'll get to Nikki Haley coming up in just a couple of minutes. Here's the deal. I try not to overcomplicate things. And I advised you in 2023 that while it is up to you when you decide who your horse is in this long race, that you don't have to pick anybody until 2024. And in 2024, you will be expected to make some decisions about where you are and who your candidate is. That said, people selected in Iowa, Ron DeSantis saw no path to success in New Hampshire, obviously. He put a lot of eggs in the South Carolina basket and was seeing no results in the South Carolina basket. And over the weekend, the DeSantis folks went to their donors and asked their donors what their donors thought. We're talking the big money boys, what their donors thought about him continuing in the race versus leaving the race. And eventually it was described to Ron DeSantis that he had no path forward. And when that becomes obvious, honest candidates make honest decisions. And it is as difficult as anything, especially when you're at that position of political power, right? When you've run for House of Representatives and you've taken care of business. When you've run for governor and you've taken care of business. When you've been reelected as governor with the wide majority that Ron DeSantis has been reelected, that comes with a little sense of I can do anything, I can accomplish anything, I can overcome anything. And obviously this was something he could not overcome. There will be a lot of, and already there is, quite a bit of over-analyzing what happened with regard to Ron DeSantis. It's not that difficult. Two things. One, Ron DeSantis reminded a lot of us of what politicians acted like before Trump. And we did not like that. Number two, Ron DeSantis made a calculated decision in probably as early as 2022, but certainly by 2023 upon his announcement, that there would be a broad category of conservative Americans that were over Trump in 2024 and would be ready to move on. And that wasn't true. It isn't true. It's true for some, but not nearly the numbers that Ron DeSantis needed in order to parlay that into a winning strategy in the primary. And that is as simple as it is. For those of you that want to turn Ron DeSantis into the enemy, I would suggest to you that you give me a call today so we can talk about that. Because if every other Republican known to man is your enemy outside of Trump, that is a poor long-term strategy for success for the United States of America, if I do say so myself. From an ideological standpoint, Ron DeSantis was never the enemy. And he would be hard-pressed to be my enemy in any way. Because I believe in what he believes in. I believe in mostly what he stands for. Not everything, because I'm not a conservative. And so there are some aspects of what Ron DeSantis believes that I veer off of, and then it's why I don't categorize myself as a conservative. But he gets a lot of things right from a conservative position and from an ideological standpoint. I do not believe that Ron DeSantis failed because of his politics. He failed because of his persona, and he failed because he was going up against the man. I mean, to use the college football parlance, I mean, do we judge coaches against a Nick Saban because they fail in comparison to Nick Saban? Well, I guess that's fair. All is fair in love and war in college football. But I would suggest that it's unfair to compare Josh Heupel against Nick Saban when Nick Saban is widely considered to be the greatest there ever was. Similarly, I think these comparisons between DeSantis and Trump are somewhat unfair because Trump has completely changed the dynamic of the playing field that politics will exist on for the near future, if not forever. If not forever. Ron DeSantis believed that Donald Trump would be weakened by the many criminal cases and court cases against him. That has only strengthened him. Perhaps he believed that he could win over voters with a different type of personality. A lower key personality did not work whatsoever. And many voters considered that Ron DeSantis was too plastic for their taste. And that's something that Donald Trump has changed forever. And so there is that. So DeSantis is out. I said over the weekend that I thought that it would be an interesting stroke, and I do not take it. Look, I understand this is more of a long shot than it's not, but I'm telling you, it is not outside of the realm of possibility that Ron DeSantis could be considered for a vice presidential candidacy. Now, the biggest impediment is the Florida thing, but that is not it is not impermissible for two candidates from the same state to run on the same ticket. That is something that is misunderstood by a lot of people. But what does happen is that triggers a very quirky aspect of the 12th Amendment of the Constitution of the United States where their electors in their home state cannot be voted on for them. So they would have to win the Electoral College by a margin greater than whatever Florida gets, 29, 30, I don't know what it is. They would have to win the Electoral College by a greater number than that, or one of the two candidates would have to claim residency in a different state. This actually happened. This has happened in the recent, in modern times. 30. Is it 30? Oh, I was pretty close. Thank you, Bill. Dick Cheney was charged with finding George W. Bush as vice president, and Dick Cheney ultimately decided that he was the guy to be vice president, and so he became the vice presidential running mate. In order to accomplish that, Dick Cheney, who had lived in Texas for some time, changed his residency and went to Wyoming and lived in Wyoming in the aftermath of, well, during the vice presidency and in the aftermath of the Bush 2 terms. He moved specifically to avoid questions about residency and whether or not Texas's electors would count for a Bush-Cheney ticket. So while it is permissible, it is inadvisable because you put some of those electors in question. I do not believe that Donald Trump is of the mindset that he needs Ron DeSantis in Florida. I don't think that Ron DeSantis is necessarily of the mindset that he needs to be vice president of the United States. I'm simply suggesting that it is not outside of the realm of possibility. Donald Trump did this before. Donald Trump had the chance to pick a vice presidential candidate in 2016 that was from outside of the Beltway, and instead he picked an established conservative in Mike Pence. And that served him pretty well till the very, very end. And I think it was fine at the end, too. I mean, there's a lot of folks that suggest that Pence is a turncoat and all of that. I understand that they had a difference of opinion about what authority the vice president had with regard to certifying the election and what authority he did not have, and I understand that that's still a constitutional debate that's ongoing. That said, I think Pence served Trump well inasmuch as he acted in a manner consistent with Trump's policies. He defended Donald Trump. He would not get caught up in the narrative of the leftist media who tried to drive a wedge between the vice president and the president of the United States during his 4 years in office. 3036 says, Matt, 2 white men aren't going to get elected. Well, I disagree with that. I think I understand the importance of a diversity pick, and I'm sad to say it. I would like for it to be best man, best woman for the job, period, end of discussion. But I understand that if you can avoid giving narratives to the mainstream media so that they can avoid, the mainstream media is going to spend the next year avoiding talking about Joe Biden at all costs. Understand that. And so anything you give them to run with, they're going to run with it. So if you give them the white guy narrative to run with, they're going to run with that. The calculus is, can you overcome their narratives that they present to the uninterested or unmotivated American that just starts paying attention a month out before the presidential election sometime in October? So it's almost as if you decide to select someone that looks the same as you, then obviously they have to overcome the fact that they look the same as you based on what the media is going to do with that narrative. Make sense to you? Sure. All that to say, DeSantis out. Nikki Haley still in, at least until tomorrow night, where she will be beaten by Donald Trump, in my estimation, although it will be a pretty fairly closely contested contest. I would expect that Nikki Haley stays in until at least South Carolina because it's her home state.